Everybody. I'm a different kind of doctor. I cure a different kind of headache than you. And I'm actually really pleased to have been invited, thank you, JP, to share some ideas about how to think about innovation and share a living case study of these ideas in practice with this company, IPT, that JP mentioned. John Macy's a co-founder, Dave Nichols, CEO and co-founder is here. So I'm a professor at a business school, and what I study is broad issues around strategy and innovation. And this picture was shown already a couple of times. You all recognize this as Edison. What's interesting about Edison, of course, is that even though he's known for the light bulb, he didn't actually invent the light bulb. Right? The light bulb was invented 60 years before Edison. And that is really kind of a startling fact, because if I tell you that the light bulb was invented 60 years before Edison, what am I really telling you? Right? What I'm really telling you is that the light bulb was a failure for 60 years. Right? That this thing that is recognized as the greatest invention ever and the greatest innovation ever. Right? You go anywhere in the world today, ask a child to draw a picture of somebody having an amazing idea, it's always the same picture. It's a face with a light bulb on it. Light bulb was a failure for 60 years. And so for me, this is the start of an innovation journey that begs the question, not how do we come up with great innovations, but a second question, which is how do we understand the difference between great innovations that succeed and great innovations that fail? Right? So I think the world is awash in great innovations. What we want to understand is the difference between those great innovations that succeed and those that fail, because what we don't want to confuse, I love that quote about, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's not all innovations that fail that were bad innovations. And in particular, what I would say set Edison apart from his predecessors, and by the way, his real-time rivals, all of whom were working on better light bulbs. The thing that set Edison apart was that when he looked at the light bulb, he asked the question that I've spent basically 25 years studying. And that is the question of what else? He looked at the light bulb and he saw not just a way of making a better light bulb, but he saw all the other stuff that would need to happen to make this innovation actually create the value that was inherent in its potential. So he looked at the light bulb and he saw the need to generate electricity, the need to transmit electricity. Very important innovation was the power meter. Like, how do you bill for electricity? And for me, this is the distinction between the way we usually think about innovation, which is what I will characterize as a narrow lens view. Right? A narrow lens view basically looks at this great idea and says, how do I make it even better? And by the way, most of the world runs on innovations where this narrow lens is enough. This notion of how do I come up with something the customer wants, that'll help the patient, that I can do, that I can have a competitive advantage in. And I would say, much of the innovation in orthopedics seems to be that, right? It's like, how do I make a better implant? How do I compete against other implants and show my superiority? But there is increasingly a drive towards innovation that require other things to happen for that core innovation to matter. And that pushes towards this, what I've called this wide lens approach, where you need to think about not just your own execution, but other parties and other partners that you need to activate and bring on board to unlock value. And the two pillars of this wide lens approach are what I talk about in terms of co-innovation. So you're going to innovate. Co-innovation is going to ask the question of, does anyone else need to innovate for your innovation to matter? That's one kind of dependence. And the second kind of dependence, what we'll talk about in terms of adoption chain, is you need to do something that satisfies the end consumer, the patient. Who else needs to buy in order for that value proposition to materialize? And here we'll think about who are the critical stakeholders who are not on the critical pathway. And because they're not on the critical pathway, it makes it that much easier to miss. So how do we take in this bigger picture, and particularly how do we do it in a context that I think you'll find interesting, which is the perioperative space. Just for me, because I am a visitor to this conference, who here comes from the surgical side? Just a show of hands. All right, most people. Who comes from the industry side? Okay, good number of people. Wonderful. So we're going to look at an interaction between these two parties that has kind of escaped a lot of notice. Let me set this up a little bit. So the perioperative space is the stuff that happens around a surgery. Out of curiosity, show of hands, surgeons, who here in the room has had a surgery postponed or canceled because trays were not available in time? Has that ever happened to anybody? Okay, lots of people, interesting. Who here among the surgeons now, in the last 5 years, has been to central sterile operations? Like wherever it is, who here has been there? All right, so this is about a third to a half of the people. By the way, this is way overrepresented, so good job, Codman Society. And who here knows that the people who sterilize all the stuff that comes magically up to the OR, the people who, if they do a bad job sterilizing, it doesn't matter where you learned your technique, okay? A surgical site infection is going to damage that patient for life. Who here knows that the people in charge of that are making about what McDonald's employees are making? That's like their decision. Right, so this is, okay, good. Now it's like a quarter of the people. So let me walk you through this space because it's a space that's really interesting as an underbelly for innovation. And what I want to discuss with you as we work through these ideas is a live case study of this company that is trying to innovate in this space with an ecosystem strategy of pulling multiple stakeholders together. That's this company, IPT. So, okay, here's the OR, and as you know, those are the surgical trays that you're going to use to really do magic and make patients better off. And what you know is that before the trays are in the OR, they're usually in the hallway. What half the room is not paying attention to is where these trays are coming from. So I'll show you this picture. Do you guys know what this is? Harry Potter. Perfect. So the Harry Potter movies, if you remember, always start with a wizard's banquet. And it's only like in the third movie or the fourth movie that we find out that this food that magically appears, much like trays in the OR, actually, there's a whole basement. And this is true also in the hospital. There's a basement where all this stuff is cooked up, right? This is where the house elf lives. And in the hospital, it's where CSPD is. And in the hospital, what the basement is composed of is this area where trays, some of which exist in the hospital, some of which are brought in and out as loaner trays, right, that are sent in by the manufacturers and the reps. These trays get cleaned through this process. And then at the end of the surgery, the trays get sent down and they're cleaned again. And some of those get put in storage. Okay, the trays come in with manufacturers. Some of them go back out of the hospital to be used somewhere else. Others stay in the hospital in storage. This is familiar, yes? Now, this world of CSPD is interesting. So these are the people who put the trays in the blue wrap. And as you know, in most surgeries, there are lots of trays that come up, many of which stay in blue wrap, some of which are open. And as a surgeon, that is not your worry. Your worry is only the ones I need. But it's interesting. So here, this is an actual case. This was a reverse shoulder, I think? John?
Total knee.
A total knee. What do I know? 30 trays were brought in. Of those 30, 7 were opened. Interesting. Now, why is that interesting? If you're on the hospital side, that's interesting. And this is like the Chinese curse sense of interesting, like not good news. Processing one of these trays cost the hospital about $90. Okay, so 10 trays unopened is $900 of cost that was borne for no good reason. There are about 10 million vendor-supported cases performed every year in the US. $90 to process instruments. Very conservatively, if you say 10 trays brought in, the statistics show, the new statistics that IPT has been able to come up with for the first time, that only about 7 of the 10 are open, means hospitals are wasting, literally wasting about $3 billion a year processing these trays. Okay, $3 billion that are coming straight out of cost. Okay, if you didn't have that, that would be all additional profit. That's the size of the loss that we're looking at. This is what that processing operation tends to look like. Trays come in, much of the recording is on paper. More advanced institutions will have like a spreadsheet that the head of sterile processing is running in Excel. It's an environment of chaos. And by the way, these pictures are coming from a top 100 orthopedic program. Right, this may well be what your operation looks like. All this information is held in loose leafs to deal with the panic of a JCO audit. This is the state of things in the basement. As I say, these trays come in and out. It's interesting. One of these trays, about $30,000 all in to build and create for orthopedics. For spine, could be $200,000. These trays come in, they go out, and the manufacturers who are sending these trays in and out, because they get paid for the implants, right? These are all supplements to the operation, have no idea where these trays are. Okay, my gas station has better information about where my propane tank is for the barbecue than any industry, speak out if I'm wrong, than device manufacturers have about their $30,000 to $200,000 trays that are going in and out. By the way, the miracle is the system works. Everyone is solvent. Everyone's doing okay. The thing that should blow your mind is, oh my God, how is there so much waste here that we're not touching? These trays can sit around. Okay, these are 2 trays that we found had not been touched from 2015 to 2016. This is a photo from 2021. Okay, these are 2 $30,000 trays, and there's a cost to capital that have not been touched, lost, forgotten. From a manufacturer perspective, they're sitting about $7 billion of assets in these trays. Again, 10 million surgeries. The amount of tray capital that is stuck in this system, the cost of moving these trays around and then discovering, if you can, that they weren't used, right? Massive, massive pockets of inefficiency. And I'm highlighting this for you because you know healthcare is in crisis. You know the economics are problematic, regardless of who you are. If you're a hospital, your economics are bad. If you're a manufacturer, your economics are bad. You can't raise prices anymore. Even breakthrough innovations aren't moving the needle on reimbursement. And what that says is maybe there's an opportunity for breakthrough type approaches to cost reduction. But a breakthrough in cost reduction is not a narrow lens type of, put in this new software. It's got to be something more holistic that's rewiring the system. And that's what I want to share with you, which is the idea of, by the way, so we can look at this and say, hey, I've been to the hospital. I've seen all, my students, MBAs, walking around. I've seen all these consultants. I've seen all these VCs walking around. Why are they not solving this problem? I will tell you. So the perioperative ecosystem is an ecosystem. You've got device makers, you've got device distributors, you've got hospital administrators, you have what's happening in the CSPD, you have what's happening in the OR. By the way, this is the high-level view, right? The real ecosystem is there's an incredible amount of interdependence being managed here, incredible handoffs that make the system work. So it's really complicated. Not only that, right? So this is, by the way, if you ever see a rep looking tired, it's because this is who they're connected to. Right? They have a legitimate reason to look fatigued. Their life is managing all this chaos in a way that hides it, usually from the surgeon. The problem is CSPD is the house elf of the hospital. You know what the house elves didn't get? Houses. You know what CSPD doesn't get? Budget. All the investment of the hospital is going to go up top. So all the consultants and all the innovation and all the VCs are focusing up in the OR because here's, business school professor, here's business school 101. Okay, follow up to your talk. If you have an invisible problem that no one's aware of, and there's a ton of complex interactions, and there's no budget for solving it, what you should do as a smart consultant is don't do that. Go find an easier opportunity. But what I'm going to try to share with you is, well, if you think about this the right way, maybe there is a really interesting opportunity. It's not easier, but it can be quite meaningful, and it can unlock a huge amount of value for a lot of different players. And so this is this IPT that I'm going to present to you. So so this is a company, by the way. There's a product. So you can hear this as, oh, this might be interesting for a hospital. You could hear this as, these guys are fundraising, might be interesting investment. But I also want you to hear this as, oh, this is an interesting way to think about an approach to innovation that takes explicitly, that embraces that complexity, and then tries to find a solution through it. So that's how I want you to hear this. So the idea behind IPT started as, this is an ecosystem. That's how I got involved. My whole thing is strategy and ecosystems. What if we took that as central? What if we took this as the reality, and we took the constraint of no budget as a starting point rather than something we can wish away? Maybe the hospital will find religion, maybe the government will make money rain down from heaven. What if we took the existing situation? What could we do about it here? And so the problem here is this is a mission-critical operation, high complexity, characterized by physical chaos, and everything here is governed by real-time and usually last-minute interactions to make sure surgeries happen on time. All right, so IPT. The idea here, obviously, is going to be introducing some kind of technology. Okay, and what's interesting is here in 2023, we have available co-innovations in the environment, right? There's cloud computing that's available. The mobile internet is available. We have Internet of Things and these RFID tags. And the first part that I'm going to share with you is, how do you bring these multiple technologies together to solve a complicated problem? And then there's a twist. So the idea here, like the innovation, is, all right, there are these, technology allows us to have tags and beacons that can identify where these tags are. So what if we attach tags, to trays? And we then create an identity for every tray that comes into the hospital. So we can track it. We know what it is, and we know what's going to happen to it. And then as we register it, and this will be the last human interaction with the process, right? So we want to eliminate as much human interaction so you don't have data errors. Once this is in place, we can now start tracking where it is, right? So here's a tray with a tag on it. And on the wall, there's an access point, there are location beacons. And as this tray moves through the system, we will know where that tray is. How does that become useful information? So here it is, right? We're going to install these beacons. And as soon as the tray becomes, as soon as a tag is associated with a tray, we know where that tag is. And the tag will also gather information about the tray, like has it been opened or closed? Has it gone through a temperature spike or not, meaning has it gone through an autoclave or not? And what this system lets us do is now, as this tray is moving through the process, we can keep track of it in real time. Okay, why is that interesting? Because if you can keep track of this tray in real time, by the way, when the trays are done, you put them in storage. I don't know how many industry folks have ever looked for a tray in storage, kind of in your career track? Yeah, anybody here spend more than 2 hours ever looking for one of these trays? Yeah, more than 2 hours. Did you ever have a week where you spent less than 2 hours for looking for trays? This is like the bane of the rep's existence, is looking for these trays covered in blue wrap and trying to figure out which one is theirs. Now, so the solution is, if we take this data as central, we can now plug it into existing activities and existing systems within the hospital. So that, for example, when a surgery is initially scheduled, we can connect to the rep. So the rep knows the date of the surgery, the doctor, the surgery kind, and can set up in the system, here are the trays that I'm going to be bringing. And let CSPD know this is what's coming so you can adjust your schedule. Okay, doctors are overworked. CSPD 10 times more. Labor shortages are crazy. Overtime is incredibly painful, right? How do you create optimization for a department that has no capacity, no budget? You change the way in which other people do work in a way that benefits those other people in order to make the process more efficient. So both on the input side and the output side, right, we can take this data and pull it together into this solution called Limelight. And the way this works is that now, if you're a rep or you're a doc, you can look on your phone the night before surgery, and you can see the status of every tray that's supposed to be ready for your surgery. Oh, there are 2 missing, someone's in trouble. Oh, they're all in the hospital, but 3 have yet to go through sterilization. Let's pick up the phone and find out. Because the way it happens today is these reps will show up at 6 in the morning in a panic to see which trays have been processed, which trays have arrived, which have not, et cetera. Right, so we can get status, we can get location, we can make all this work so much easier. And by making the work easier for the reps, for the doctors, we make the work better and more efficient for CSPD. Does that make sense? Now, the other thing is, if you're a manufacturer, what this can tell you is which of your trays are actually being used. Which of your trays have you loaned to the hospital and they haven't moved in 6 months? Which, by the way, a stranded tray is $30,000 that hasn't moved in 6 months. So 10% cost of capital, that cost you $1,500. But what's worse is manufacturers are constantly being asked by their reps for more trays. So if this tray hasn't moved and I'm missing one of these trays, I got to put another $30,000 into making the replacement tray. So it's costing me $30,000 plus the $1,500. Okay? If I'm sending 10 trays for a surgery and only 3 are being used, or 30 trays for a surgery and 7 are being used, right? You understand how much money is just being burned through? And what's interesting is, unlike so many other discussions in healthcare, this is not a zero-sum game. This is not like, oh, you're charging too much. You should charge less so I can keep more. This is waste where nobody is benefiting, right? Maybe UPS, but UPS isn't really a decision maker in our system. So that's the technological approach and the technological solution. Like, I think a really elegant approach to solving mission-critical, high-complexity physical chaos, real-time, last-minute interactions. But here's the twist. Remember, CSPD will never, ever, ever have the money to pay for this kind of solution. Ever. But you need more than an invention, as we learned, right? You need a commercial innovation. So this is the last piece. The last piece is great. You came up with this great idea. How do you actually make it a reality given the constraints within this ecosystem? And the aha is to recognize the adoption chain and what having this multiplicity of partners as part of value creation allows us to do to drive adoption and implementation. So here's the cool thing, right? So, as we said, the ecosystems, device makers, device distributors, hospital administrations, and CSPD and the OR. And here's IPT. And the game here is one of give and take. So what do these folks get? So with this IPT solution, and this was a whole struggle to figure out, like, what are the answers to this? So what does the CSPD and the OR get? They get the tech infrastructure, they get efficiency, predictability, accountability, cost reduction, documentation, by the way, which is a nightmare when a hospital gets audited by JCO. This solves for that. A big reduction in bumped and canceled surgeries because of trays that haven't been processed in time, overtime, et cetera. That's the benefit. What's interesting, when you think about these ecosystems, you can't think in terms of cost-benefit analysis holistically. You need to think about what are the specific benefits that matter across this chain, because what is a benefit to a hospital is totally different from what is a benefit to a device manufacturer. So benefits to hospital administration looks really different than CSPD, right? For them, it's visibility, analytics, preparing for these audits. Device distributors, right, what do they get? So the number one thing that they get is peace of mind. Like they can sleep at night knowing that the trays are ready, knowing that their surgeries will go through, versus needing to deal with the fire drill of, oh my God, I'm missing a tray, and the panic. Like I don't know if you've ever seen something like this, but the true panic of what happens if this surgery is delayed. Because the last thing they ever want is a surgeon to know that there's a bump. Because if you're a surgeon, your life is successful surgery, you have a rep that creates bumps, you don't want that rep. You need somebody who gives you smooth. That's why these guys live in constant fear. That's why they're always at the hospital at 6 a.m. Now they can sleep in. Right now, they can spend less time looking for trays and more times being helpful with surgery or getting trained or developing relationships. So we give them visibility in the hospital, within their network, the location, efficiency. Device manufacturers, what do they get? Right, so they get, for the first time ever, real-time inventory. They will know what trays are where. And they will know which of them are being used and which are not being used. They will know how frequently they're being used. They'll know who's using them, right? And that creates capital efficiency, right? In terms of the trays they build, the ones they deploy, they're shipping. They get real usage in their market. They get an audit trail. And by the way, if there's ever a recall, well, we know which tray was connected to which surgery. And there's no patient-specific information, right? So we don't have to worry about HIPAA. But for the first time ever, you can deal with recall-type issues in an efficient, consistent way. So that's what everybody gets. They get different things. What do they give? Well, they also give different things. So the starting point is to realize what can CSPD give? They can't give a lot of money. So they are going to pay a very modest fee to access this technology. But what they will contribute is, one, some process change in how the trays are processed when they're coming in. But two, perhaps most importantly, they will contribute operating authority. Right? They will say, if you want to bring trays into our hospital, you need to put on these tags. And that is going to engage the device distributors, right? And they can pay also a modest fee. Right, so the idea is every time a tray comes in, you pay a couple of dollars. It's like an easy pass. And what you get in return is this incredible peace of mind and visibility and efficiency. And then the device manufacturers, who are going to be really the ones getting the greatest savings, like hundreds of millions of dollars, they will pay not hundreds of millions of dollars, but they will pay more in order to get this efficiency. Right? And so what we have here is this interesting interaction of thinking about the players, thinking about what's realistic to be done, and thinking about what's the give and take you can create between them in order to allow for the adoption of this technology. Does that make sense? Right? And again, I'm presenting IPT as IPT, but I want you to have in mind this idea of when you're innovating in an ecosystem, how do you try to see this stuff in advance so you can design a strategy for it? Versus just wake up one day and realize, oh shit, these guys don't like it, now what do I do? Right? Discovering these challenges in real time, that's the worst. Right, and the requirement for an adoption chain is for every partner, they have to get more than they give. They get different things, they give different things, but each one of them needs to have a plus for this chain to cohere. And so what happens with the solution is every line here that is red is now an automated data line. Every line that's blue is a blue line that's being added. This is the life of the rep, right? The rep's life has become so much simpler because so much of what they were doing is now red, meaning it's automated through IT, and they can spend a lot more time, with the, talking to the OR nurse and spending time outside of this, particularly spending time with the doctors figuring out what's the right things to do for the surgery versus like the question of where's my tray. And by the way, so this is a real product, right? It's deployed in real hospitals, and the feedback has been amazing, right? So this is from a rep, creates peace of mind for me as a vendor, knowing that all the staff knows the trays are in the system. There's a reason why this campus is the easiest and smoothest to work with, and that's in large part due to this Limelight solution from IPT. This is from hospital executives, right? No more late starts because the staff vendor can't find supplies or equipment for cases, right? Everything is now clear and documented. Easy to install, right? This has made a measurable difference in our efficiency and throughput. And the findings here are remarkable. So here, this is from a one facility where the loaner trays that are brought in, turns out 25% of them are mislabeled before putting in the solution. 33% of trays that are processed as loaners are not opened in this hospital. And 60% of the trays, by the way, are in violation of the hospital's own rules about when things need to be delivered. Right? You're supposed to deliver 48 hours in advance. 60% are coming in less than 48 hours in advance. There's different kinds of trays called consignment trays. Right? Those are the ones that kind of sit at the hospital. Consignment trays, 15% of the trays at this hospital show no movement in 7 months. Now that they're tagged, we can see that. 37% have no movement in 30 days, right? Which means they shouldn't be sleeping there. They could be creating value somewhere else, means they don't have to be manufactured for no good reason. Their brethren don't have to be manufactured for no good reason. And 27% of the trays have at least 2 periods of 30 consecutive days in which the tray shows no movement. And the most important thing here is, I'm not reporting to you on averages. I can tell you exactly which tray applies this to, because I know because the data is coming at the level of the tray, not the level of the facility. And that's what makes it actionable as opposed to just depressing. And the other thing I'd highlight here is that this kind of information is only possible with a system that is based at the hospital, not based by a vendor. And it's only possible with a system that is vendor neutral, right? Because the hospital is taking in trays from multiple vendors. So like a Stryker solution or a Zimmer solution is not going to be acceptable to a hospital that's got more than just a Stryker or Zimmer relationship. And at the same time, if it's being imposed from the outside, you never get to see what's happening inside the hospital, right? So it's creating value for the hospitals, what's allowing us to get the operational data that then becomes so valuable to everybody else in this game. And so, the 5 criteria, mission critical, high complexity, physical chaos, real time, and the end user will not have money, turns out that you can solve this, right? If you're looking at the entire system from the beginning as you're driving your innovation journey, versus thinking I have a great innovation, and then the world will adjust because it's just too good for anybody to pass on. So that's what I wanted to share, right? So this question of what else, right? You look at innovation, and the first question is, well, what else do we need to have it create value? And the follow-on to that is, well, then who else do we need? And once I know who else I need, now I can ask the question of how do I bring them into alignment? What's the strategy for that? And that's really kind of the big, what I hope you'll take away from the talk, right? If you're interested in that, these ideas are all captured in these books I've written. And if you're interested in IPT, as I said, both from a hospital perspective, fundraising perspective, Dave, don't be shy, or just like how to think about this, Dave and John Macy, co-founder, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.